Let me ask you something. What would you do if the world wanted to erase you? Not kill you, erase you. Remove your name from every temple, every inscription, every memory. That is what happened to Nefertiti. One moment she was the most powerful woman on earth, depicted smiting enemies like a pharaoh. The next moment, nothing. No death record. No mummy. No tomb. Just silence. And yet, her face survived. A face so striking that it became the symbol of ancient beauty. But here is the question the museums do not ask. Did she fool the world into thinking she was only a pretty queen while secretly ruling as a king? Stay with me. Subscribe and like this video. Because the answer is hidden in a single name, a name that sounds almost exactly like hers, carved into a king's throne. And once you hear it, you will never look at that bust the same way again. In 1912, a German excavation team sifted through the ruins of Amarna, a city abandoned so completely that its very name had been scrubbed from history. They were not searching for treasure. They were digging through the leftovers of a failed revolution. Broken pottery, unfinished statues, the debris of a king named Akhenaten who had tried to erase Egypt's gods and lost. But inside a small, unassuming workshop, buried beneath layers of dust and time, they found something that did not belong in a trash pile. It was a bust. A woman's face carved from limestone and painted with extraordinary care. High cheekbones, smooth skin, lips pressed together in an expression that was neither a smile nor a frown but something far more unsettling, knowing. This was Nefertiti, the great royal wife of the heretic Pharaoh. And yet, as the archaeologists would later realize, this stunning object was never meant to be a finished portrait. It was a sculptor's model, a reference piece for students to copy, the ancient equivalent of a sample image pinned to a workshop wall. The most recognizable queen in human history achieved global immortality not because she commissioned a grand temple statue, but because someone forgot to clean up their practice draft. That irony is almost cruel. Her face became the symbol of ancient beauty, grace, and power. But the bust itself was never supposed to leave that room. It was a tool, not a monument. And that realization opens a door to a much darker possibility. If her most famous image was merely a throwaway exercise, then what did the real Nefertiti look like? What kind of power did she actually wield that required such a casual representation to survive while her true royal portraits were smashed or stolen? The workshop gave us her cheekbones. It did not give us her secrets. And as we will see, those secrets begin with a simple, haunting question. Why did the most visible woman in Egyptian art vanish from history at the very moment she should have been celebrated? The bust stayed behind. But Nefertiti herself walked away, or was pushed. And the next part of our story follows the trail of a name that sounds almost identical to hers, carved onto a pharaoh's throne, waiting for someone to notice. That name, Neferneferuaten, appears on royal records just as Nefertiti vanishes from view. But before we chase that ghost, we must understand what kind of woman could even attempt such a transformation. Because Nefertiti was never an ordinary queen holding flowers in the background. From the moment she stepped beside Akhenaten, she claimed a space no royal wife had ever occupied. In the art of Amarna, size means power, and she is carved nearly as large as the king himself. Her profile mirrors his. The sun's rays, the divine hands of the Aten, reach for her equally, offering the Ankh, the breath of life. She does not stand behind him. She stands beside him. And in several temple reliefs, she does something no queen should do. She smites enemies. Her arm raised, a blade in her grip, the bodies of captives crushed beneath her chariot wheels. That pose was reserved for pharaohs alone. It was a visual declaration. I defend Egypt. I uphold cosmic order. I am the one standing between chaos and civilization. So what was she? A supportive spouse? Or a co-ruler hiding in plain sight? The intimacy of the images complicates everything. In one carving, she sits on Akhenaten's lap, their foreheads touching, their daughters playing at their feet. It is almost tender, too tender for formal state propaganda. Yet it is carved in stone for eternity. Some scholars believe she was not merely queen but co-regent in the final years of Akhenaten's reign. If true, she already held the authority of a king before her husband's body grew cold. And that raises a dangerous question. When a pharaoh who has overturned 1,000 years of religion begins to fade, who holds the real power? The priests of Amun, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance? Or the woman who has watched every ritual, memorized every weakness, and positioned herself as the sun's chosen partner? Nefertiti knew the machinery of power because she helped build it. And when that machinery began to crack, she would have known exactly where to place her hands. But then came the silence. No tomb. No death. Just a name scratched out and another name rising in its place. The next keynote follows that new name into the throne room. That new name is Neferneferuaten. And the moment it appears, Nefertiti disappears. Not gradually, not with a funeral procession or a mourning inscription. Just gone. Around the 12th year of Akhenaten's reign, her image stops appearing on temple walls. Her cartouches are left unfinished. The royal couple, once carved as nearly identical twins of power, fractures into silence. For a woman so visible, so deliberately placed at the center of a religious revolution, this absence is not merely strange. It is terrifying. In ancient Egypt, to vanish from the record was to die twice, once in the flesh and again in the memory of the living. Without a name carved in stone, the soul could not find its way to the afterlife. So where was Nefertiti? The simplest explanation is death. Perhaps plague, which had already taken several of her daughters. But if she died a queen, why no tomb? Why no mourning reliefs? Royal deaths were state events, documented with the same precision as military victories. Her silence suggests something else. Something political. The priests of Amun, sidelined and humiliated by Akhenaten's monotheistic revolution, were not forgiving. They waited. And when the pharaoh's health began to fail, they saw their chance. Perhaps Nefertiti was not a victim of disease, but of a palace coup too subtle to leave scars. Her name would not be smashed, that would admit she existed. Instead, it would simply be omitted. A quiet erasure, more efficient than violence. But there is another theory, more intimate and unsettling. What if Nefertiti did not die? What if she transformed? To survive, she would have needed to become someone the priests could not touch. And that someone would need a new name, a new face, a new gender. The records show that precisely when Nefertiti vanishes, a pharaoh named Neferneferuaten begins to rule. The linguistic echo is impossible to ignore. And this new ruler carries feminine pronouns in some inscriptions, yet wears the regalia of a king. The next keynote asks the forbidden question. Did Nefertiti simply cut off her hair, strap on a false beard, and claim the throne as her own? If she did, she would not have been the first. Centuries earlier, Hatshepsut had done exactly the same thing. When that queen decided to rule as pharaoh, she did not announce a gender revolution. She simply changed her appearance. The ceremonial beard. The bare chest. The masculine titles. Not a disguise, but a uniform. The office of king was male, so the occupant became male, at least on temple walls. Nefertiti, if she became Neferneferuaten, would have understood this institutional theatre perfectly. The inscriptions left behind are frustratingly ambiguous. Some refer to Neferneferuaten as effective for her husband, using feminine grammar. Others slide into masculine pronouns when describing royal acts. This grammatical slippage is not a mistake. It is a footprint. A woman ruling as king, caught between the language of her body and the language of power. But the most suggestive evidence lies in the regalia. In one damaged relief, a figure wearing the blue crown of a pharaoh performs rituals before the Aten. The face is partially destroyed, but the body is slender, the posture less broad than a typical male king. Egyptologists have argued for decades. Is this Nefertiti as co-regent, or Neferneferuaten as sole ruler? The truth may be that they are the same woman, standing at two different moments of her political metamorphosis. And yet, if she truly seized the throne, she held it for only a brief, fragile window. Because soon after, a new name appears. Smenkhare, another shadowy figure whose identity has never been confirmed. Some believe Smenkhare was a younger brother, a son, or perhaps Nefertiti yet again, rebranded under a third name. The possibilities multiply like whispers in a dark corridor. What is certain is that the revolution was dying. Akhenaten's son cult was unpopular. The priests of Amun were regaining their nerve. And anyone tied too closely to the heresy would be swept away when the old gods returned. So perhaps Nefertiti's greatest act of deception was not becoming king, but knowing exactly when to stop being one. The next keynote follows the final erasure, as Tutankhamun's restorers chisel her memory into dust.